Why was she still waking up gasping for air after all these years? Even now, far from the sound of gunfire, far from the cries of men drowning in the black water of her memory, she still reached for a weapon that wasn't there. Lieutenant Commander Alina Sullivan sat upright on her narrow bunk, heart pounding, sweat slick on her skin. For a few seconds she didn't know where she was. Then the faint hum of the ceiling fan grounded her. The scent of salt, oil, and rust drifted in from the docks. She was home, Key West, not Kandahar, not the Gulf, not that night in the Strait of Hormuz. Outside, the sea whispered against the stilts of her small house, patient and eternal. The kind of sound that should have brought peace, but peace was something she'd never learned to live with. She rose quietly, muscles stiff, the old scars in her shoulder tightening like wire. The mirror on the wall caught her reflection, short dark hair clinging to her face, skin marked with faint silver lines, and eyes that looked older than her 38 years. Eyes that had seen too much. Downstairs, she poured coffee and stood by the window. The horizon was barely pink, morning fog still veiling the marina. Her 36-foot fishing boat, the Resolute, rocked gently against its moorings. The hull was chipped, paint peeling, but the engine purred like a loyal dog. She'd rebuilt it herself after leaving the Navy, piece by piece, like she'd tried to rebuild herself. Fishing charters, occasional dive lessons, and engine repair jobs kept her bills paid. It was enough. Quiet, predictable, the kind of life she'd once thought impossible. But as the sun climbed over the water, Alina's jaw tightened. She'd been restless lately, that ache in her chest that told her peace wasn't built for people like her. She turned when she heard the voice from behind her. Looking lean and mean as ever, Sully. Bill Thompson leaned against the doorframe, coffee in hand, wearing the faded grin of a man who'd seen the same hell and decided to laugh at it. 20 years in the Marines had left him half-deaf and half-suspicious of everyone, but he was the closest thing Alina had to family. "Better than looking like I ate the frog," she said, smirking. Bill laughed, rubbing his knee, the bad one that warned him when storms were coming. "You're up early. Thought you didn't have a charter till next week." "I don't," she said, "just needed air." Bill studied her. He didn't press. He knew better than to ask what haunted her nights. "Got a delivery for you," he said, pulling an envelope from his back pocket. "Guy came by the shop asking for you, said it's urgent." Alina frowned. "Who?" Bill shrugged. "Didn't give a name, just said you'd know him." She took the envelope, thick, heavy, government paper. The handwriting stopped her cold. Admiral James Harmon. The name tasted like rust and betrayal. She hadn't heard it in 5 years, not since she walked away from the Navy and everything it demanded of her. Not since that operation that never made the news but left 6 of her team dead, and one truth buried deep enough to choke on. Alina tore open the envelope. Inside was a single photograph, a Soviet-era freighter streaked with rust. The name on its hull read St. Petersburg. Beneath it, a short note written in Harmon's tidy block letters. "Need eyes on this vessel. Suspected weapons transfer. Civilian approach only. 1 weekend. $20,000. Call if interested." At the bottom was a phone number. Bill whistled low when he saw it. "You're not thinking of calling, are you?" Alina didn't answer. She kept staring at the photograph, the kind of ship that carried ghosts, not cargo. "Did he say where he's staying?" "Didn't have to. Government type. You know the kind, clean shoes in dirty towns." Alina set the photo on the counter and picked up her coffee again, though it had gone cold. 5 years, she said quietly. Not a word, and now this. Bill crossed his arms. "Last time you trusted that man, you nearly didn't come back. Whatever he's selling, don't buy it." She gave him a thin smile. "You know me better than that." "That's what worries me," he said. By noon, the marina was alive. Tourists chasing marlin and selfies. Locals haggling over bait. The smell of diesel and saltwater hung thick in the air. Alina guided the Resolute out of the channel, the hum of the motor drowning her thoughts. but she wasn't heading for open water. She turned north to the old naval pier, the one still under restricted access. The man waiting there wore khakis too clean for the keys and sunglasses that tried to hide guilt. Admiral James Harmon hadn't changed. Silver hair, ramrod posture, and that same voice, calm, confident, dangerous. "Alina," he said, as if they were still on speaking terms. "Admiral," she replied, keeping her tone flat. "It's just James now. I'm retired." "Funny, I didn't think your kind ever retired." Harmon gave a practiced chuckle, always the sharp tongue. "What do you want?" she asked. He produced the same photograph she'd seen that morning, laying it on the railing between them. The St. Petersburg, old Soviet freighter running under a Panamanian flag. Officially, it hauls coffee and textiles. Unofficially, it's been smuggling Russian weapons into Miami and down to the Colombian cartels. And the DEA suddenly needs a washed-up SEAL to handle their surveillance. "Special consultant," he said smoothly. "They need someone local, someone who knows how to blend in. And someone they can throw away if it goes wrong," she said. Harmon's eyes flickered. "You were always too smart for your own good." "Then find someone dumber," Alina said, turning away. He stopped her with a single word: "Sarah." Her entire body froze. "What about her?" "She's in her second year at the University of Florida, isn't she? Marine biology major, like her mother wanted. Scholarships don't cover everything, do they?" Alina turned slowly, every muscle coiled. "If you ever—" "I'm just saying," Harmon interrupted, voice low. "You've got responsibilities, and this," he tapped the photo, "is a clean job. Recon only, in and out, no engagement. You'll be back by Sunday and 20 grand richer." Alina's hand twitched toward the knife she always carried, but she didn't draw it. She just stared at him, the man who'd sent her team into an ambush and called it acceptable risk. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "Don't think too long," he replied. "Ship anchors off Sugarloaf Key tomorrow evening. Opportunity won't last." That night, Alina sat on the porch, watching the tide creep in. A small lamp glowed beside her. Her daughter's voice came through the phone, bright, familiar, grounding. "Hey, Mom, you okay? You sound tired." "Just long day, kiddo. How's school?" "Hellish. I've got a 20-page paper due Monday on coral bleaching. I was thinking of driving down for the weekend. Maybe get out on the boat, grab some first-hand data." Alina hesitated. "Can't this weekend, Sarah. Got a charter last minute." "Oh," the disappointment in her daughter's voice pierced deeper than any bullet. "Since when do you do last-minute charters?" "Guy's a regular, wants to fish deep water. It's good money." Sarah sighed. "I just miss home, that's all." Alina looked out at the Black Sea. The photo of the freighter lay on the table beside her, catching the lamplight. "Come home," she said finally. "Use the house. Quiet place to work. But I'll be out till Sunday. Deal?" "Deal," Sarah said, voice brightening again. "Love you, Mom." "Love you too, kiddo." When the call ended, the silence felt heavier. She sat there a long time, staring at the water. Something about the mission didn't smell right. Harmon's timing, his tone, the way he'd said clean job. There was no such thing, not in his world. She went inside, opened a small steel locker under her bed, and entered a code she'd told herself she'd never use again. Inside lay a weathered Beretta M9, the last piece of her Navy past she hadn't been able to bury. She cleaned it in silence, methodical, the motions automatic. "Just reconnaissance," he'd said, "just pictures." Then why did it feel like war? The next morning the air was already hot and sticky. The sky burned cobalt blue and the horizon shimmered like glass. Alina loaded the Resolute with supplies, bait, fuel, spare filters, and beneath the deck, her Beretta and a waterproof bag with spare ammo, a knife, and a first aid kit. Bill showed up with a cooler and a frown. "You sure about this?" "Just reconnaissance," she said. He grunted. "That's what they told me in Fallujah." He set the cooler down hard. "If you don't check in by Sunday noon, I'm calling the Coast Guard." "Don't you trust me?" she asked. "I trust you," he said. "I don't trust them." When the engine roared to life, the vibration ran up her arms like adrenaline. Bill stood on the dock, watching her go. "Bring the boat back in one piece, Sully," he called. "No promises," she said with a smirk. As the Resolute cut through the turquoise waters of the Keys, Alina felt the old rhythm return. The hum of the engine beneath her feet, the salt on her lips, the horizon widening like a challenge. By late afternoon, she was miles offshore. The sun melted into gold and crimson, painting the sea like liquid fire. She dropped anchor, cast a few fishing lines for cover, and watched the horizon. The phone Harmon had given her buzzed once. "Package inbound," his voice said. "Freighter approaching. Photographs only. Do not engage." "Copy," she said, though her gut twisted. The first thing she saw was the silhouette. The St. Petersburg rose on the horizon like a rusted fortress, its cranes jutting into the sky. Even from a mile away, she could sense its menace, a dead ship pretending to be alive. Through binoculars, she counted 12 crew on deck. Their movements were sharp, rehearsed, not sailors, mercenaries. She lifted the camera, began to shoot profiles, containers, faces under floodlights. Every image, a piece of truth. And then she saw it, the American Eagle emblem stamped on a crate being loaded below deck. U.S. Navy communications equipment. Her heart skipped. What the hell was that doing here? She reached for the satellite phone, then froze. If Harmon was dirty, calling him would sign her death warrant. She lowered the phone slowly. The ship's spotlight swept across the waves once, twice, then stopped, right on her. Her pulse surged. "They see me," she whispered. Engines roared across the water. A smaller boat detached from the freighter, speeding straight toward her. Alina slammed the throttle forward, the Resolute leaping into motion. The smaller craft was faster, slicing through the waves like a predator. Gunfire cracked. Bullets punched the water around her. She ducked, adrenaline surging. She'd been in firefights before, deserts, jungles, docks in the dark, but not like this, not alone. The chase lasted less than a minute. They caught her. The speedboat rammed her hull. 4 men boarded, weapons drawn. The one leading them was tall, blonde, eyes like Arctic glass. "Fishing?" he asked with a faint accent. Strange time for that. Alina said nothing. He found the wetsuit she'd hidden, her Navy ID in the drawer. "Lieutenant Commander Alina Sullivan," he read aloud. "Navy SEALs, retired. How interesting." She met his gaze. "I was fishing." He smiled without warmth. "Then you won't mind coming with us to answer a few questions." As they zip-tied her wrists, Alina's eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. 5 years she'd stayed out of their wars, and somehow they'd dragged her back in. But there was something she hadn't told them. Not yet. The metal steps groaned beneath her boots as they shoved her below deck. The air reeked of diesel, rust, and something darker, the scent of a ship that had forgotten sunlight. The blond man walked behind her, calm and precise. His weapon never wavered. "Careful with her," he said to the guards. "She's not the usual kind of guest." They pushed Alina into a small compartment lit by a single hanging bulb. Steel walls, bolted chair, zip ties cut into her wrists. Her breathing was steady, measured, a soldier's rhythm. The blond man sat across from her, resting the pistol on his knee. "I am Victor Cross," he said with that clipped European precision, "and you are an inconvenient mystery." Alina's lip curled. "You've met women before, haven't you?" He smiled faintly. "Not many who show up alone at night, photographing my ship." "Maybe I like ships." "Then you chose a dangerous hobby." He leaned forward. "Who sent you?" She stayed silent. Cross nodded as if he expected that. "Your boat will be searched. If you are innocent, nothing to worry about." She said nothing again, though her mind was racing. The camera, the phone, the compartment. If they found the waterproof bag, she was finished. "Nothing to say?" he asked. "I'd ask for a lawyer," she said, "but I doubt you believe in those." That earned her a soft laugh. "You Americans, always so sure of rules." He stood. "You'll stay here until you remember how to talk." He signaled the guards. One of them, a thick-armed Russian with tattoos creeping up his neck, drove a fist into her stomach. The impact stole her breath. She doubled over, coughing. Cross didn't look away. "I prefer cooperation," he said, "but I am patient." When the door closed behind him, she let out a long, slow exhale. Pain pulsed in waves, but she'd had worse. In the silence that followed, she counted seconds, trained reflex. Every operation had a rhythm. Every man had a pattern. They'd left her tied to the chair. Hands forward this time. A mistake. She tested the strength of the zip ties, thick, industrial, but everything broke eventually. She studied the room, seams in the walls, the single bulb, the rusted floor grate. There were no cameras. Either they were confident she couldn't escape, or they didn't care if she did. Her body hurt, but her mind sharpened. She learned long ago pain was just information, and information kept you alive. Hours blurred. The ship vibrated with motion, engines humming low. They were underway, somewhere far from the coast now. A guard entered twice, once to offer her water, once to take it away. Both times he said nothing. When the door opened again, it wasn't the guard. It was Cross and another man. Older, heavier, with the face of a man who'd commanded storms. His uniform was salt-stained, his hands rough. "This is Captain Roman Volkov," Cross said. "He owns this vessel. He has questions too." Volkov's eyes were small and cold. "Who sent you?" "No one," Elena said. He stepped closer, the smell of tobacco and sea clinging to him. "You lie poorly for a soldier." "I'm not a soldier anymore." Volkov's backhand came fast. Pain exploded across her cheek. Blood filled her mouth. Cross said nothing, just watched, measuring. Volkov spoke again. "The Americans have been watching my ship. DEA, Coast Guard, always watching. But they use boats with flags, with uniforms, not women alone with Navy credentials." "Then maybe you should ask your friend here why he brought me aboard," Elena said. That earned her another blow. Harder, she bit back a sound. Volkov leaned down. "You will talk, everyone talks." "Maybe," she whispered, "but not to you." The third strike never came. Cross raised a hand. "Enough, Captain, bruises are easy. Broken minds take finesse." Volkov glared at him but stepped back. "She's yours," he said, and left. When the door closed, Cross sat on the edge of the table. "You have spirit," he said. "I admire that. It makes your death a shame." "Funny," she said, spitting blood. "You sound like someone who's not in charge." His smile thinned. "You assume too much. Tell me, Elena, how long were you in the SEALs?" She didn't answer, but the flicker in her eyes told him enough. He continued softly, almost kindly. "I've read about your type, quiet, capable, dangerous, and yet here you are, alone, abandoned." Her pulse steadied. "You read the wrong files." "Maybe," he stood. "But I think I know why you came. You wanted to prove something to someone, or maybe to yourself." He left before she could respond. When the lock clicked, she exhaled slowly. Every conversation was a weapon, and Cross had just told her something without meaning to. He knew her name, her background, which meant they'd already called Harmon. And Harmon hadn't denied knowing her. The betrayal burned colder than the steel walls. Sometime later, hours or days, she couldn't tell, footsteps echoed again. 2 guards entered. One cut her restraints, the other gestured toward the door. "Move." They led her through narrow corridors smelling of oil and sweat, then up a flight of metal stairs. When she stepped onto the open deck, the sunlight blinded her. For a moment she just stood there, swaying with the motion of the ship, eyes squinting against the glare. The sea stretched endless around them, blue and merciless. Cross stood near the railing, hands behind his back. Volkov smoked beside him, looking bored. "Mr. Sullivan," Cross said almost politely. "Or should I say Commander Sullivan?" "It's Lieutenant Commander," she said, "because some habits die hard." He inclined his head. "Then I apologize for the demotion." Chains rattled at her feet. Her eyes flicked down a concrete block, a short length of chain shackles. Volkov exhaled smoke. "You've seen too much. You will tell no one." Cross gestured to the horizon. "The ocean is fair. It buries its secrets." Alina stared at them, the wind tangling her hair. "I know who sent me," she said quietly. Volkov chuckled. "Do tell." "Admiral James Harmon," she said, voice steady. "He's not DEA, he's working with you." That made Cross pause, just for a second. She saw it, the twitch in his jaw, surprise real. "There's a photograph below deck," she said. "You're in it, both of you and him." Cross's eyes narrowed. "You've been observant." "So am I right?" she asked. "He's selling American equipment, isn't he?" Volkov's expression darkened. "Enough." "Tell me," Alina pressed. "What's he trading? Weapons? Technology? How much does a flag officer cost these days?" Volkov's fist came fast, slamming into her ribs. She folded, gasping. "Prepare her," Cross said. His tone was flat again, detached. "We're done." The guards moved in, securing the chains around her ankles. Alina straightened, meeting Cross's eyes one last time. "You really think the ocean will keep your secret?" He looked at her for a long moment, then, almost imperceptibly, slipped his hand into his pocket. When it emerged, he held something small, a shard of glass, broken bottle neck. He pressed it into the fold of her waistband without a word. And then he nodded to his men. Volkov gave a final drag of his cigarette and flicked it overboard. "Goodbye, Commander." They heaved the concrete block. The chain snapped taut. The world tilted. The ocean rose to meet her. Impact, a rush of bubbles, silence. The cold wrapped around her like a living thing. Pressure crushed her chest. The chain dragged her downward, deeper and darker, the light above shrinking fast. Her lungs screamed. Panic clawed at her mind. "No, breathe later, think now." Her training took over. Every lesson drilled into her during Bud S. Every nightmare of drown-proofing drills. Every second she'd ever spent pushing past fear. She twisted her body, reaching for the waistband. Fingers slick with blood found the glass shard Cross had given her. She didn't think, she cut. Plastic zip ties split. Her hands came free. The pressure roared in her ears. The chain held her ankles tight. She bent forward, ignoring the agony in her ribs, sawing at the metal links. The padlock connecting them was cheap, rusted. 1, 2, 3 strokes, nothing. 4, a spark. 5, the metal snapped. The concrete block tumbled away into the dark below. Alina kicked, hard. The motion sent fire through her chest, but she kept going. 20 feet, 30, her vision tunneled, her body screamed for oxygen. 40 feet, her chest convulsed, muscles rebelling. "Hold it." 50. The light widened. Her hand broke the surface first, then her face. She gasped, air searing her lungs like acid, coughed, choked, gasped again. Every breath hurt, but it was life. The freighter was already distant, a shadow moving away, oblivious to the life it had failed to extinguish. She floated, barely conscious. The taste of salt and blood filled her mouth. Her fingers trembled as she turned toward the horizon, nothing but water and sky. But she wasn't dead, not yet. And if she was alive, she still had a chance to warn someone, to stop Harmon, to see her daughter again. She whispered into the wind, voice breaking, "You should have made sure." Then she started to swim. The night stretched endless. The water grew colder. Each stroke was a prayer, each breath a small victory. The stars above blurred, time dissolved. Her mind drifted to Sarah, to Bill, to every face she'd left behind. "Don't quit, Sullivan." She heard her old instructor's voice echo across the years. "Not till you're home." And somewhere deep beneath the exhaustion, she smiled. Because home wasn't a place anymore. It was a promise. She didn't know how long she'd been swimming. Minutes, hours. The ocean didn't keep time, it only demanded. Each wave lifted and dropped her like a rag doll. The salt burned her eyes, her throat, her cracked lips. Her arms trembled with every motion. The rhythm of survival had replaced the rhythm of thought. Stroke, breathe, float, kick. When she'd left the Navy, she thought she was done fighting water. Now it was the only thing keeping her alive. The stars wheeled above her, countless, cold, infinite. Somewhere in that pattern was the North Star, steady as command. She found it, or maybe she imagined it. Either way, she used it. Navigation wasn't hope, but it was direction. She whispered between gasps, "Northwest, keys are northwest." Her ribs ached like broken glass. Her left hand was useless, 2 fingers bent wrong. She kept swimming anyway. At some point, she didn't know when, her fingers brushed metal. Smooth, curved, slick with algae. She blinked through the salt, a hull. She clawed toward it, pulling herself over the rounded side until her torso rested on the overturned boat. Her breath came in shudders. The moonlight revealed faded lettering along the stern, PEL, the rest obscured by the waves. She wiped at it, the full name surfaced like a ghost, Pelican. Recognition stabbed her through the haze. Pete Garcia's fishing boat. She'd fixed his motor 6 months ago. "Pete," she whispered, as if saying his name might summon him from the dark. She slid into the water again, circling the wreck. Near the bow, something bumped her leg. A shape, human. Her throat tightened. She turned it over. Pete floated face down, tethered to the hull by a rope around his ankle. A bullet hole marked the center of his forehead. For a long time she couldn't move, just stared. The ocean swayed him gently like a cruel lullaby. Finally, she reached out, untied the rope, and let him drift away into the current. Her voice broke when she spoke. "You didn't deserve this, old man." Her hand found his belt, a knife in a sheath, a small waterproof pouch. She took them both. Not theft, inheritance. Back under the capsized hull, she found an air pocket, just enough space to breathe. The boat's radio hung shattered, wires ripped clean. Not an accident. Someone had made sure no one called for help. A survival kit floated loose, flare gun, bandages, a small bottle of water, a flashlight. She stuffed everything into the pouch and pushed back into open sea. The horizon glowed faintly to the east, dawn. She made it through the night, barely. By the time her feet touched sand, she could barely stand. The island, if it could be called that, was little more than a spit of coral and scrub palms. No houses, no docks, no people, just solitude. She collapsed on the beach, coughing up seawater. The taste of iron coated her tongue. She rolled onto her back and stared at the morning sky. Clouds drifted in lazy sheets, indifferent to her existence. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe without purpose, to feel something other than pain. Then she forced herself to sit up. The first rule of survival: move before you need to. The second, hope is not a plan. Her fingers shook as she opened Pete's emergency kit. 1 water bottle, 1 flare, 2 antiseptic wipes. She cleaned the cuts on her wrists and splinted her fingers with pieces of driftwood. The pain kept her grounded, proof she was still here. From the island's center, she could see all of it at once. 100 yards long, maybe less. Half submerged at high tide. A few rusted barrels, a collapsed shack that had once been used by fishermen. Nothing else. The sun climbed higher, heat shimmered. Her mouth turned to sandpaper. She rationed the water 1 sip at a time, just enough to wet her throat. Then she began gathering driftwood. If she couldn't leave, she'd signal. With Pete's knife, she scraped together palm fronds and old nets. It took hours, sweat blinding her eyes. every movement deliberate. Finally, she had a pile big enough. She tore Pete's old shirt into strips and wrapped them around a stick. Improvised flag. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short SOS. She lit the signal fire using the flare, feeding it green leaves to make smoke. The gray column rose thinly into the blue sky. Then she waited. By afternoon, the fire was nearly ash. She'd begun hallucinating shapes in the heat, faces she missed, voices she'd buried. Her daughter's laughter drifted through her mind like a memory of sunlight. Sarah would be at the house now, probably sitting on the porch, wondering why her mother hadn't called. Don't think about that. Alina closed her eyes, pressed her palm against her ribs and whispered, "She's safe. She's safe." When she opened her eyes, something glinted overhead. A dot small at first, moving fast. She blinked hard. Another hallucination. No, it grew larger, black shape, rotor blades. A helicopter. She stumbled to her feet, waving her makeshift flag. "Here!" Her voice came out cracked, barely sound. She shouted again, louder this time. "Here!" The helicopter turned, slowed. Then the voice, mechanical, amplified over the roar of the rotors. "Survivor on the island. Remain where you are. Prepare for extraction." Relief buckled her knees. She laughed once, harsh and broken. Then she fell to her knees as the rotor wash blasted sand into her face. 2 figures jumped down, Navy uniforms. One crouched beside her. Lieutenant Commander Sullivan. Her throat closed. "Yes. We've been searching for you. You're safe now." "Who sent you?" she rasped. The younger man hesitated. "We received a distress call this morning from a William Thompson. Said his friend was overdue from a fishing trip. We diverted from training exercises to assist." "Bill." She almost laughed again. The old Marine had kept his word. "Anyone else know you found me?" "Just our ma'am. Captain Reynolds aboard the USS Nimitz." She nodded. "Then get me there now." They exchanged glances but didn't argue. They lifted her gently into the helicopter. As they rose, the island shrank to a patch of white sand, then vanished completely. Alina leaned against the door frame, eyes fixed on the horizon. Somewhere out there, the St. Petersburg was still moving, and Admiral James Harmon was waiting to erase whatever evidence she'd seen. She wasn't going to let him. Not again. The USS Nimitz loomed like a floating city, gray steel and controlled power. The smell of jet fuel and salt water filled her lungs as the Seahawk set down on deck. Sailors moved with crisp precision, eyes widening as they saw her, battered, bruised, barefoot but standing. She was escorted to the med bay, where a doctor fussed over her cracked ribs and dehydration. She barely heard him. Her focus narrowed on a single thought: Harmon. After treatment, they brought her before Captain David Reynolds, a broad-shouldered man with weathered eyes and a calm, no-nonsense voice. He studied her file before looking up. "Lieutenant Commander Sullivan, we thought you were dead." "So did I," she said. He gestured for her to sit. "I want to understand what happened. Our rescue logs show you were reported missing 3 days ago, but there's no official record of your mission." "There wouldn't be," she said quietly. "It was given to me off the books by Admiral James Harmon." Reynolds's expression tightened. "That's a serious claim." "So is being thrown overboard in chains." She told him everything: the setup, the interrogation, the crates marked with American emblems, Cross, Volkov, the photograph of Harmon standing beside them. When she finished, Reynolds didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he said, "You realize what you're accusing him of?" "Treason," she said flatly, "and murder." He nodded slowly. "Do you have proof?" "My boat, the Resolute. There's a camera hidden on board with photos of the equipment and the men running it. If it's still afloat, it's out there with the freighter." Reynolds tapped his pen against the desk. "That ship, St. Petersburg, was spotted 2 hours ago, heading southeast at 12 knots. If they cross into Cuban waters, we lose them. Then don't lose them, Alina said. He studied her for a long moment. You're in no condition to go back into the field. She met his gaze. I'm the only one who knows exactly where to look. You want the truth, then you'll take me with you. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then Reynolds nodded once. We'll prepare an SDV insertion. You'll go with a SEAL team. In and out, no engagement unless necessary. Alina exhaled, tension leaking from her shoulders. Thank you. He gave a faint smile. Don't thank me yet, just make sure you come back this time. Hours later, she sat in the cramped belly of the submersible. The hum of its electric motor filled the space like a heartbeat. Across from her, Lieutenant Commander Alex Morgan, younger, steady-eyed, checked his weapon. You sure you're up for this, ma'am? She flexed her taped fingers. You ever tell a SEAL she's not? He grinned, didn't think so. Through the viewport, the ocean was black and endless. The faint outline of the St. Petersburg loomed above, its propellers churning the sea like thunder. Morgan's voice came through the comms. Target vessel ahead. Secondary objective, recover Sullivan's boat. When Alina saw it, her resolute, trailing behind the freighter, half submerged, her throat tightened. Her heart beat faster. Home and evidence all in one fragile hull. The SDV surfaced silently alongside it. The water slapped softly against steel and fiberglass. Alina went first. Her body screamed from the effort, but she pulled herself aboard with practiced grace. The deck was as she'd left it, except for one thing. Everything had been searched. Drawers torn open, tools scattered. She knelt beside the helm, felt under the console, pressed the hidden panel. It clicked open. Her waterproof bag was still there. Camera, satellite phone, both intact. She checked the camera's display. Images loaded, crates, weapons, faces, and that unmistakable Navy insignia. Proof. This is it, she whispered. Everything we need. Morgan's voice was urgent. Then we move, Commander. They'll notice us any second. They slipped back into the water just as the freighter's searchlights flared on. Shouts rang across the deck. Gunfire followed, sharp cracks above the roar of the sea. Bullets hissed into the water around them. Alina swam harder, pain forgotten. The waterproof bag clutched to her chest. The SDV's hatch loomed ahead, open, waiting. Hands pulled her in. The hatch slammed shut. Go, 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 Morgan barked. The submersible dove. Bullets pinged harmlessly against its hull. Alina leaned back, breath ragged. The evidence pressed cold against her ribs. For the first time in days, she let herself believe she might win. But somewhere deep inside, another voice whispered, "It's not over, not until Harmon falls." And she knew it was right. The hum of the engines filled the corridor, a low, steady growl that felt like the pulse of a beast beneath her feet. Alina walked down the passageway, wet hair dripping, her uniform clinging to her bruised skin. The sealed waterproof bag was slung across her shoulder. Every step echoed louder than it should have, as if the ship itself was listening. Captain Reynolds met her at the entrance to the operations room. His expression was a mask of calm, but his eyes betrayed the storm underneath. "Commander Sullivan," he said quietly, "please tell me that's what I think it is." She nodded, unzipping the bag. Photographic proof, weapons crates, serial numbers, U.S. Navy communication arrays, Harmon's signature on the manifests. And she paused, voice low, "Faces." Reynolds motioned for the technician to lock the door. "Let's see it." The images flickered onto the big screen, raw, grainy, but undeniable. Harmon beside Cross and Volkov, crates stenciled with the Navy crest, dates matching shipments that had supposedly been destroyed years ago. The room fell silent. Reynolds exhaled slowly, hands clasped behind his back. "Dear God, he's been selling them our own weapons." "Using his position to cover it," Alina said, "and using me to bury it." Reynolds turned to her. If this goes public, it'll shatter the Navy's credibility. He's a decorated admiral, 2 stars, 30 years of service. And 30 years of secrets, she said coldly. You think he'll just surrender quietly? No, Reynolds admitted. I think he'll come for you first. Alina's eyes flicked toward the sealed door. Then we'd better make sure he can't. Reynolds nodded to the comms officer. Encrypt everything. Transmit to Naval Intelligence, Washington, priority red. The officer's fingers flew over the keyboard. The screen flashed. Encryption sequence active. Alina watched the progress bar climb. 20%, 30, 40. Then it stopped. Transmission error. The officer frowned. Signal disruption, sir. Source unknown. Reynolds leaned in. Try the backup channel. Already did. Dead air. It's like someone's jamming us. Alina's stomach turned cold. Harmon knows. The captain's voice hardened. Cut all external comms except internal emergency frequency. I want every transmission logged. She stepped closer. Captain, with all due respect, that won't stop him. If he's jamming from outside, he's got assets in range, ships, drones, something. Reynolds looked at her, jaw tightening. What do you suggest? Lock down the data. Get it off this ship. A physical copy, something he can't erase remotely. He nodded once. Agreed. Take a secure drive. Copy everything. You and Morgan will deliver it to command personally. She hesitated. You don't think we'll make it there, do you? Reynolds didn't answer, but the silence was enough. By the time she reached the flight deck, the wind had picked up sharp biting. The horizon bled orange where the sun touched the sea. The deck crew moved with silent urgency, prepping the helicopter for takeoff. Morgan approached, helmet under his arm. Orders came fast. Too fast, Alina said. Harmon's pulling strings. He frowned. You think he knows we're taking evidence? She tightened the strap on her vest. If I were him, I'd make sure this helicopter never lands. Reassuring, he muttered. Reynolds appeared beside them, handing her a sealed case. Hard copy of the evidence. Multiple encryption layers. You get this to Naval Command in Norfolk personally. Do not trust anyone in between. Alina met his gaze. What about you? He smiled faintly. Someone has to keep the lights on. The wind roared louder as the rotors spun up. Alina climbed aboard, sliding the case between her boots. Morgan followed, strapping in. As the helicopter lifted off, the Nimitz shrank below them, a gray island fading into mist. For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of hope. Then the radio crackled. This is Flight Command, you're off course. Morgan frowned. Negative command, following grid vector 116. A pause. Copy that, the voice replied, calm, official, too calm. Proceed to alternate waypoint Sierra 9, immediate priority. Alina froze, she knew that voice. Harmon. Her hand darted to the radio switch. Negative, this is Sullivan, you do not alter course. Maintain vector. Morgan's eyes widened. Ma'am, that's an admiral. Not anymore, he's not. Static hissed through the line. Then Harmon's voice again, smooth as glass. Lieutenant Commander, I'm impressed. Most ghosts stay buried. Her grip tightened. You should have made sure I stayed that way. A pause, then. You have something that doesn't belong to you. It's evidence, she snapped. Proof of your treason. Treason? Harmon's laugh was soft, cold. You really think anyone will believe a woman who disobeyed direct orders and ran a rogue mission? You're not a whistleblower, Alina. You're a liability. Morgan looked between them, confused. Ma'am, what's happening? Alina's voice was steady. He's jamming the channels and trying to control the flight. Correct, Harmon said. And when this helicopter disappears over the Atlantic, it will be a tragedy. A hero lost at sea. A file corrupted beyond recovery. Alina reached down, unlatched the case and pulled out the hard drive. You're wrong about one thing. And what's that? She leaned close to the mic. I don't die easy. She yanked the headset off. Morgan, change course now. Where to? Southwest, nearest Coast Guard station. The helicopter banked hard. Alarms blared. Below, two black dots appeared on the horizon, fast-moving. Approaching. Morgan cursed. Incoming bogies, 2, maybe 3, they're closing fast. Private interceptors, Alina said grimly. Harmon's cleanup crew. Bullets sliced past the tail rotor. Metal screamed. Hang on, Morgan shouted. The world tilted violently. The helicopter lurched, spinning. Warning lights flashed red. Fire burst from the right engine. Alina grabbed the case, bracing against the floor. The sea rushed up at them, green, cold, final. Impact. Everything went black. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments, sound first, then pain. Waves, metal creaking, a gull crying somewhere far away. Alina's eyes opened to a blinding sky. The helicopter lay half-submerged, smoke trailing from its shattered fuselage. Morgan was slumped beside her, unconscious but breathing. Blood ran down his temple. Her own body screamed with pain, ribs, shoulder, ankle. She ignored it, crawled toward him, checked his pulse. Steady. The case floated nearby, bumping gently against the wreckage. She reached for it, dragging it back with both hands. From the corner of her vision, movement, dark shapes circling just below the surface. Fins. Of course, she muttered. Of course it's sharks. She looked up. A sliver of land broke the horizon, distant, barely visible. The helicopter's emergency raft hung deflated, tangled in cables. She cut it loose, dragged it out, inflated it manually. The sound of a second engine echoed above the waves. She turned, saw a black helicopter approaching, smaller, sleeker. Harmon's men. Not today, she whispered. She heaved Morgan into the raft, then shoved the case in after him. The downwash from the new chopper whipped salt into her eyes as she climbed in. Gunfire erupted, bullets slicing the water around them. She grabbed the oars and began to row. Slow, controlled, every stroke a prayer. The other helicopter circled, searching. A voice through a bullhorn shouted something she couldn't hear. She ignored it, kept rowing. Minutes felt like hours, then silence. The engine sound faded, the sky emptied. She didn't stop, not until the black shape of the island grew solid ahead. When they reached the shore, she dragged Morgan onto the sand and collapsed beside him. Her chest heaved, every muscle screamed. She looked at the case lying between them, dented, water-slick but intact. Morgan groaned, opening his eyes. We alive. Barely, she said. He squinted toward the horizon. They'll come back. I know. So what now? She stared out at the endless blue. The same ocean that had tried to kill her now whispered quietly at her feet. Now, she said softly, we make sure the truth survives even if we don't. Her voice trembled with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with something deeper. Not rage, not fear, something quieter. Conviction. She reached for her sidearm, checked the magazine, and glanced at Morgan. You can still back out, get to higher ground, hide. He shook his head. You saved my life, guess I owe you one. She smiled faintly, then we're even. They sat in silence for a moment, the wind tugging at their torn uniforms. Somewhere behind them, the jungle rustled, alive with unseen things. The horizon glowed crimson as the sun dipped low. Alina reached into her pocket, pulled out a small waterproof radio she'd salvaged from the wreck. Static hissed, then a faint voice broke through. Repeat, this is Coast Guard Sector Key West. Unidentified aircraft down approximately 80 miles south. Respond if you read. Alina's hand tightened around the transmitter. This is Lieutenant Commander Alina Sullivan, United States Navy. 2 survivors requesting extraction. Coordinates transmitting now. The voice crackled back. Copy that, Commander. Hold position. We're coming. She let out a shaky breath, head tipping back against the sand. For a brief, fragile moment, she allowed herself to feel it hope. But the feeling didn't last. Because far above, in some quiet office in Washington, Admiral James Harmon was already making his next move. And Alina Sullivan had just declared war. The thrum of rotors returned long before they saw the aircraft. Alina had started to think the Coast Guard transmission had been a mirage, one more cruel trick from the sea. Then the sound grew real, a low, disciplined rhythm, different from the chaos that had chased her hours earlier. Morgan sat upright, clutching his ribs. "They found us." "Or someone wants us to think so," she murmured. The helicopter came into view, white and orange against the endless blue. Coast Guard markings bright and clean. It circled once cautious, then descended. Sand and salt whipped through the air. A rescue swimmer dropped, moving with textbook precision. He reached them, checked pulses, signaled to the crew above. 2 survivors confirmed. 1 injured male, 1 female, Lieutenant Commander Sullivan, U.S. Navy. Her ranked her name, already known. Still she nodded. "We're ready for lift." They were hoisted aboard. The crew moved efficiently, professional smiles that didn't reach their eyes. One medic pressed a gauze pad to Alina's temple. "You're lucky, ma'am. We picked up your beacon just in time." "My beacon?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," he said, not looking at her. "Was transmitting from your raft." Her stomach tightened. She hadn't activated a beacon. The medic caught the flicker in her eyes but said nothing. He only smiled again, the kind of smile soldiers give when pretending the orders make sense. The helicopter turned north. For 30 minutes, no one spoke. Morgan drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling about fire and sharks. Alina kept her gaze fixed on the horizon. Then the headset crackled. "This is Cutter Hamilton. Approach from bearing 019. Prepare for immediate transfer of survivors." The pilot responded, "Copy that." Alina frowned. The Hamilton wasn't stationed near these waters. "Where's your base?" she asked. The pilot hesitated. "Temporary command, orders from Washington." Her pulse quickened. "Whose orders?" "Admiral James Harmon, ma'am." Cold spread through her chest. She glanced at the medic. His jaw tightened, but he didn't meet her eyes. The chopper banked. Ahead, the gray shape of the cutter emerged from the haze, sleek, new, efficient. Too efficient. She leaned close to Morgan. "Stay awake. Whatever happens next, stay with me." He blinked, groggy. "We're safe now, right?" "Not yet," she whispered. The deck crew helped them down. Uniforms crisp, movements rehearsed. Too rehearsed. A tall officer approached, silver insignia gleaming. "Lieutenant Commander Sullivan, I'm Captain Rourke. Admiral Harmon informed us you'd been recovered. We're under orders to debrief immediately." Alina forced a polite nod. "Understood, but my partner needs medical attention first." "Of course," Rourke said smoothly. "Corpsman Vega will see to him." 2 men led Morgan away. She caught his eye, 1 second of silent warning. "Don't let them separate us too long." Rourke gestured toward the cabin. "This way, Commander." The inside of the cutter smelled of disinfectant and machinery. Too clean. A place built to erase evidence. They entered a narrow room. A table, 2 chairs, 1 camera in the corner. Rourke gestured for her to sit. "You've been through an ordeal," he began, voice low, official. "But we need to establish a clear timeline. Admiral Harmon said you were assisting in a classified surveillance operation that went wrong." Alina studied him. "That's not what happened." He smiled thinly. "Then enlighten me." She met his gaze. "Harmon orchestrated an illegal weapons trade. He's using Russian intermediaries to sell Navy tech to cartels. I have proof." "Proof?" She lifted the waterproof case onto the table. "Inside this drive are photos, manifests, coordinates, everything." Rourke didn't touch it. He only folded his hands. "And where did you obtain this evidence?" From my vessel before they destroyed it. Destroyed, he repeated, as though testing the word. You're aware that accusing a senior officer of treason without verification constitutes a breach of conduct. I'm aware that covering it up constitutes one too, she said. His smile faded. I see. The silence stretched. Somewhere deep in the hull the engines hummed, a sound like a ticking clock. Finally he reached for the intercom. Commander Sullivan is secure. Proceed to step 2. Alina's hand moved faster than thought. She grabbed the case, slammed it shut, and rose. What's step 2? Rourke stood too. You'll rest, we'll handle the file. You mean destroy it? He sighed, almost regretful. You could have made this easy. The door opened. 2 guards entered. Alina didn't hesitate. She swung the metal case into the first guard's throat. He stumbled, choking. The second lunged. She drove an elbow into his ribs, grabbed his sidearm, and leveled it at Rourke. Tell me where Morgan is. Rourke's voice stayed calm. You won't make it off this ship alive. Maybe not, she said, but neither will your orders. She backed toward the corridor, gun steady. Alarms blared. Red lights strobed. Sailors shouted. Somewhere aft an explosion shook the hull, the sound of chaos she hadn't started but could use. She ran. The corridor forked toward the medical bay. 2 guards sprinted past without seeing her. She slipped into a side compartment. Morgan lay on a stretcher, half sedated, IV line dripping. A corpsman typed notes nearby. Alina pressed the gun to his neck. Step away. He froze, then lifted his hands. Easy, Commander, he needs rest. He needs freedom. She ripped the IV free, slapped Morgan's face lightly. Wake up. He blinked. Where? No time, we're leaving. Together they stumbled through the lower deck. Sirens wailed overhead. Alina found a maintenance hatch, pried it open, and climbed into the narrow crawlspace. They moved through darkness and steel until the sounds above became distant. Morgan's breathing was ragged. They're not Coast Guard, are they? Not anymore. What's Harmon doing? Cleaning house. He gave a broken laugh. Guess we're the dirt. They reached an access panel leading to the stern. Moonlight spilled through the cracks. Beyond it the sea waited again, black, endless, free. Alina peered through the slats. A small launch bobbed alongside the hull. 2 men loaded crates, gear, not cargo, escape gear. She turned to Morgan. We take that boat. He managed a grin. You and the ocean again. Seems we can't stay away. She eased the hatch open, lowered herself down the ladder. The air smelled of fuel and salt. 1 guard turned too late. She silenced him with the butt of the pistol, caught his weapon before it hit the deck. Morgan climbed down behind her, swaying. Still with you, he murmured. Good. They unhitched the ropes, dropped into the launch, and pushed off. The engine coughed, then roared. The cutter loomed behind them, sirens flaring like wounded beasts. A searchlight swept the waves. Gunfire cracked. Alina gunned the throttle. Hold on. The boat surged forward, skimming across the black water. Bullets sparked off the surface. A flare burst overhead, painting everything blood red. Morgan fired back, blind but defiant. You think Harmon expected this? He underestimates ghosts, she said. The shoreline rose ahead, a jagged silhouette of mangroves and limestone. She aimed for it, weaving through the incoming fire. Then silence. The cutter faded behind them, its lights shrinking to distant stars. They slowed near the shallows. Alina cut the engine. The only sound was the sea licking at the hull. Morgan slumped against the seat, breath ragged. We can't keep running. We won't. She opened the case, checking the drive, still intact. She held it up to the moonlight. We leak this to someone outside the chain, someone Harmon can't touch. Who's that? She hesitated. There's a journalist in Miami, Laila, investigative. I fed her intel once years ago. She still owes me. Morgan nodded slowly. Then we head for Miami." Alina looked back toward the horizon where the cutter disappeared. A faint tremor rippled through her, rage, fear, something she couldn't name. "He thinks truth is a threat," she said softly. "He's right." They made landfall hours before dawn, hiding the boat among mangroves. The world smelled of wet earth and gasoline. As they trudged inland, the first rays of morning cut through the mist. Morgan limped beside her, blood soaking his bandage. "Why do you keep going?" he asked quietly. She stopped. The question hit harder than the bullets. "Because if I stop," she said, "they win, and people like Harmon keep deciding who deserves to live in silence." He nodded once, fair enough. They walked until the sound of engines faded, replaced by the chorus of waking birds. For a moment it almost felt like peace, but Alina knew better. Peace was just the pause between betrayals. She looked down at the drive in her hand. It was small enough to lose, fragile enough to crush. And yet inside it was everything: truth, proof, the last echo of every life Harmon had traded. She closed her fist around it. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak," she whispered. "It simply acts." Then she kept walking. The highway shimmered under the Florida heat. By the time they reached Miami, the sun was already a white blade overhead, slicing through the haze. Their stolen truck rattled like it might collapse before the next exit. Morgan drove, one hand on the wheel, the other pressed to his ribs. Every pothole made him wince. Alina kept her eyes on the rearview mirror. She'd been doing that for 80 miles. Nothing yet. But nothing never lasted long. The city rose out of the flat horizon. Glittering towers, mirrored glass, the illusion of safety. Morgan exhaled. "Feels weird seeing civilization again." "Depends what you call civilized," she said. They took back roads, staying clear of cameras. Alina had spent enough years running covert ops to know that the first enemy wasn't a bullet, it was surveillance. They parked behind an abandoned cannery by the docks. Rusted corrugated walls, graffiti, pigeons nesting under broken eaves. The kind of place people looked at once and forgot. Morgan shut off the engine. Now what? Alina reached for the glove box, pulled out a prepaid phone still sealed in plastic. She cracked it open, powered it on, and dialed a number from memory. 2 rings, then a voice, low, female, wary. "Who is this?" "Laila Torres, it's Sullivan." A pause long enough to hear breathing. "Alina." "It's been a while." 8 years, Laila said slowly. "And the last time I heard that name, it was buried under 2 NDAs and 1 funeral report." "I need to see you," Alina said, "in person." Another pause. Then, "If this is about the story you told me never to touch again." "It's bigger now, it's Harmon." Silence. Then, "Meet me at the old Marina Cafe in 30, come alone." Alina hung up. Morgan looked at her. "We trust her." "She used to expose men like Harmon for breakfast," Alina said. "But if he's reached her too." "Then what?" "Then we improvise." The cafe was half dead, paint peeling, ceiling fans turning lazily in the humid air. Locals sipped coffee thick as oil and pretended not to listen. Laila Torres sat in the corner booth, sunglasses on, hair shorter than Alina remembered. She looked like someone who had survived one too many truths. When Alina approached, Laila stood halfway, eyes scanning the room. Then she smiled faintly. "You look like hell." "Been worse," Alina said, sliding into the booth. Morgan stayed near the door, watching the street. Laila stirred her coffee. "You disappeared after Kandahar. I tried to find you. Then they told me you drowned." "They weren't wrong," Alina said quietly. "Just premature." "What's going on, Sully?" Alina slid the encrypted drive across the table. "This is what he's been doing. Selling weapons, comms tech, everything we built trust on." Layla's hand hovered over the case. "You sure you want me to see this? Once I open it, there's no going back." That's the point. Laila hesitated, then flipped open her laptop. She connected the drive, encrypted twice over. Lines of code flashed. Images appeared, crates, serial numbers, Harmon's signature under shipment manifests. And then the photo. Harmon shaking hands with cross on the St. Petersburg. Layla's jaw tightened. Jesus. Alina watched her reaction carefully. You believe me now. I believed you before, Laila said. I just didn't know how deep the rot went. Morgan moved closer. Can you get it out there fast? Laila nodded slowly. I can push it through 3 independent servers, Dropbox to major outlets. But once it's public, Harmon won't just come for me. He'll burn everything connected to this story, including you too. Alina leaned back. He's already tried. Laila closed the laptop, her voice softening. You sure this isn't about revenge? Alina looked out the window where sunlight danced on the bay. It used to be. Now it's about survival, for people who don't even know they're in danger. Laila studied her a moment longer, then exhaled. All right, give me 2 hours. Alina nodded. We'll wait here. No, Laila said, shaking her head. Not safe. There's a motel 2 blocks south, Mariner's Rest. Room 14, go there. If I'm not there by sunset, you run. She packed her laptop and left without looking back. The motel smelled of mildew and cheap cigarettes. The carpet was damp underfoot, the air conditioning loud enough to cover whispers. Alina sat on the edge of the bed, cleaning her sidearm with slow precision. The ritual calmed her. Morgan lay on the other bed, eyes half closed. You think she'll make it? He asked. She's smart, Alina said, but Harmon's faster. He chuckled softly. You always were bad at optimism. She glanced at him. And you always mistook realism for pessimism. A knock, 2 short, 1 long. The pattern Laila used years ago during embedded missions. Alina moved to the door, gun ready. Who is it? It's me, Laila's voice called. Open up before someone sees. Alina unlatched the chain. Laila slipped inside, sweating, eyes wide. We have a problem. Morgan sat up. Define problem. Laila dropped the laptop onto the bed. I uploaded the data to 3 servers. 2 were wiped within minutes. The third, my contact in D.C., said someone in Naval Command issued a federal security block. Harmon, Alina said. Worse, Laila replied. He's declared you a rogue asset. There's a warrant out. Espionage, treason, theft of classified intel. Morgan cursed under his breath. He flipped the board. Laila rubbed her temples. You've got hours before every agency in the country's looking for you. Alina paced the small room. There's got to be another route. If we can get the physical drive to an embassy, maybe. Not anymore, Laila said. Harmon's locked airspace and customs under national security orders. Alina stopped moving. The silence pressed heavy. So what? Morgan asked. We hide forever. No, she said. We finish it. She looked at Laila. How long before your contact goes dark? Could be minutes. Then we make him choose. Get him something he can't delete. Laila frowned, meaning. Go live, Alina said. Right now, stream it. Morgan blinked. You're insane. Maybe, she said. But Harmon controls every filter except public eyes. Once the truth in daylight, he can't smother it without choking himself. Laila hesitated, then nodded. Okay, but we need a clean uplink, no hotel Wi-Fi. Alina grabbed her jacket. There's a news tower 3 blocks east. Rooftop repeater, we'll use that. Morgan groaned, standing. You're turning us into an action movie. She smirked faintly. Then let's make it a good one. They moved through the narrow streets under the setting sun. Miami glowed gold and crimson, the city alive with horns and voices, oblivious to the small war unfolding within it. Laila carried the laptop. Morgan covered the rear. Alina led, scanning reflections in every car window. When they reached the tower, the front gate was chained shut. She scaled it in seconds, landing light on the other side. This way. They climbed 6 flights of metal stairs to the roof. The repeater blinked steadily against the sky. Laila plugged in the drive, cables snaking across the concrete. Signal strong, encryption bypassed, ready to go live. Morgan leaned on the wall, breathing hard. You do realize the second we start, they'll trace it. Elena checked her weapon. That's why you and I hold them off. He looked at her, saw the calm in her eyes and nodded. Laila hit the key. The screen lit up. Live stream public broadcast. She uploaded the first image, Harmon's handshake with Cross. Then the manifests, the serial numbers, the signed authorizations. Within seconds, comments flooded the feed. Is this real? Fake photos. Whistleblower leaks Navy corruption. Then the number of viewers tripled, then quadrupled. Layla's hand shook. It's working. A spotlight cut through the dusk. Black SUV at the base of the tower, then another. Elena saw them first. They're here. Morgan grabbed his rifle. How many? Too many. Voices shouted below, boots on metal stairs. Elena crouched near the access door. Laila, keep uploading. Don't stop no matter what happens. Layla's voice was barely a whisper. I won't. The first man through the doorway didn't even finish his shout before Elena dropped him with 2 clean shots. Morgan took the second, then the third. But more came, always more. The feed flickered, reconnecting. Laila yelled over the noise, almost there, 92%. Elena reloaded, faster. Gunfire sparked off metal beams. A bullet tore through the sleeve of her jacket. Another hit the laptop's casing, but it kept running. Upload complete, Laila screamed. Elena grabbed her arm. Unplug it, we move. They sprinted across the roof, bullets chasing their heels. Smoke drifted up from below. At the edge, Elena threw a rope from a maintenance rig. Go. Laila hesitated. You first. Now. Laila slid down, vanishing into the alley shadows. Morgan followed, grunting with pain. Elena turned once more toward the door. Harmon's men flooded through, flashlights cutting the dark. She fired a last burst, then followed the rope down into the night. They regrouped in a backstreet near the marina. Sirens echoed across the city, red lights painting the clouds. Laila clutched the laptop to her chest. It's out there. Every outlet's mirrored it already. Harmon can't pull it back. Morgan laughed weakly. Then we did it. Elena looked toward the skyline. Not yet. He'll fight back. Denials, discrediting may be worse, but at least now the world knows where to look. Laila touched her shoulder. You could disappear again, you know, start over. Elena smiled faintly. Ghosts don't start over, they just fade where they're needed most. Morgan sank to the curb, exhausted. So what now, Commander? She looked east, where dawn's first gray light touched the water. Now, she said softly, we see if truth can swim. And for the first time in years, she let herself believe it might. By morning, the city had turned into a battlefield of headlines. News vans lined the streets, satellites pointed skyward. Every channel ran the same image, Admiral James Harmon shaking hands with Russian intermediaries on a rust-eaten freighter. Every host asked the same question. Was the Navy selling its soul? Elena watched from a cheap motel room, curtains drawn tight. The TV's glow painted her face pale blue. Laila sat on the bed beside her, scrolling through a dozen feeds at once. It's everywhere, she said softly. You broke the dam. Morgan, still bandaged and bruised, gave a hoarse laugh. Yeah, and now we're drowning in it. Outside, sirens wailed, blending with the chaos of traffic and reporters. Miami had become a hunting ground for truth, for survival, for silence. Elena switched off the TV. He'll hit back. Laila nodded. He already has. Every outlet that ran the footage just got a federal injunction. He's calling it fabricated disinformation, claiming Russian deepfakes. Morgan leaned forward, so he's still controlling the message. Trying to, Laila said, but he can't stop the raw files. They're mirrored on servers in Europe now. It's too late to erase them. Alina stood, packing the narrow room. He doesn't need to erase the truth. He just needs to erase us. The air felt heavy with unspoken things, exhaustion, fear, the strange calm that comes after surviving too long. Morgan broke the silence first. So what's the plan, Commander? Alina looked out the window at the rising sun. We disappear, for now. Laila frowned. You can't just vanish. People will ask where you are. They'll ask, Alina said, and Harmon will answer. Let him. Every lie he tells will cut deeper when proof keeps surfacing. Laila studied her face. And where will you go? Alina didn't answer. Not yet. By noon, the motel was crawling with reporters and unmarked cars. Alina saw them first, government plates, tinted windows, men with earpieces pretending to be tourists. She turned to Laila. Pack up, time's up. They left through the back alley, slipping into the warren of side streets that smelled of oil and salt. The heat was suffocating, humidity clinging to every breath. A van rolled past slowly. Morgan stiffened. They're sweeping the area. Keep moving, Alina said. They cut through an old shipyard, weaving between rusted hulls. Somewhere nearby, a forklift started, drowning the sound of their footsteps. Alina spotted a row of cargo containers stacked 3 high. She pushed open one of the doors and motioned them inside. It was dark, the air thick with the scent of old tarps and dust. They waited. Minutes stretched. The noise outside faded again. Laila whispered, How long can we keep running? Alina leaned against the steel wall. As long as it takes. You sound like you've said that before. I have, Alina said quietly, in places worse than this. Laila's voice softened. You ever regret it, the missions, the silence? Alina thought of Sarah, her daughter's smile the day she left for training, the letters she never sent, the birthdays she watched from afar. I regret the things I didn't fight for soon enough, she said, not the fight itself. When night fell, the docks emptied. They slipped out again, sticking to the shadows. Morgan limped badly now. Can't keep this pace, he muttered. Alina scanned the harbor until she spotted what she needed, a weathered fishing boat, engine idling, captain smoking by the rail. She approached quietly. You running tonight? The old man squinted. Depends who's asking. Someone who needs to get to Key West. He eyed her, then Morgan and Laila. Coast Guards locking every route south. Big man in Washington spooked. Alina pulled a wad of cash from her jacket, Harmon's blood money, salvaged from the cutter. Then this should make you braver. He grinned. Climb aboard. They set off under moonlight, the boat carving a narrow path through silver waves. The city lights faded behind them, replaced by open darkness. Laila stood at the bow, hair whipping in the wind. You really think we'll be safe down there? Alina adjusted the compass. Safe doesn't exist, but distance buys time. Morgan sank onto a crate. You ever wonder what happens after this? What do you mean? When the war's done, he said, when there's no one left to fight. Alina smiled faintly. Then maybe we learn how to breathe again. He nodded, closing his eyes. Can't remember the last time I did. The ocean stretched endless and black. Waves whispered against the hull, steady as a heartbeat. For the first time in days, the silence felt almost gentle. By dawn, they reached the outskirts of the Keys. The boat anchored near a small cove where mangroves clung to the shore like survivors of their own war. Alina helped Morgan ashore. We'll rest here, a day, maybe 2. Laila unpacked a portable transmitter, setting it on a flat rock. Still getting signals. Harmon's all over the news calling for an emergency hearing. He's playing the Patriot now. Of course he is, Alina said. He'll frame this as a smear campaign, claim the images were staged. But the files, People believe what they want, she said. The truth doesn't shout, it waits. Laila looked up. And what are you waiting for? Alina didn't answer immediately. She watched the tide creep in, foam licking at her boots. Closure, she said finally, but I don't think that exists either. They hid in an abandoned ranger shack deep within the mangroves. Days blurred into nights. They slept in shifts, ate from ration packs, listened to static-filled radios whisper about hearings, investigations, resignations. Harmon's face was everywhere calm, composed, lying through perfect teeth. We cannot allow foreign adversaries to manipulate our heroes, he declared to the press. This is an attack on our integrity. Laila threw a tin mug at the radio. Integrity. He has the gall to use that word. Alina didn't look up from cleaning her weapon. He's scared. You can hear it under the control. Morgan rubbed his temples. And if he wins the narrative, then the story dies, Laila said bitterly. No, Alina said. Then we tell it again, louder, until it can't be buried. She paused, then added softly, that's the part they never understand about people like us. We don't stop when they tell us to. On the fourth night, rain came hard and sudden. Wind howled through the palms. The shack rattled. Alina sat by the window, staring into the storm. Laila slept on the floor beside Morgan, who'd finally drifted into uneasy rest. Lightning split the horizon, and in that white flash she saw it. A boat dark moving fast, no lights. She grabbed her rifle, up now. Morgan jolted awake. What? They found us. Engines roared closer, waves crashing against the mangroves. Voices shouted over the wind, foreign accents, disciplined movements. Cross's men. Layla's eyes widened. How? Alina answered without looking away from the window. Harmon never loses his trail. He just lets you think you've escaped. She tossed Morgan an extra magazine. We hold them long enough to scatter, take the drive and go north through the trees. There's a ranger station 2 miles inland. Call every outlet you can. Layla's voice broke. And you? Alina smiled, tired, unshaken. Someone has to buy you time. No, Laila grabbed her arm. We do this together. Alina met her eyes, steady and quiet. You'll do it because of me. That's how this works. Outside, flashlights cut through the rain. Boots splashed through shallow water. Morgan pressed the drive into Layla's hands. Run, don't stop. She hesitated only a heartbeat, then turned and vanished into the trees. Alina watched until the darkness swallowed her, then chambered around. Ready? She asked. Morgan grinned through blood and rain. Always. The first man through the doorway didn't even raise his weapon before Alina fired. The second dropped to Morgan's shot. The air filled with thunder, gunpowder, and salt. They fought until the rifles clicked empty, then knives, then fists. Lightning tore open the sky, revealing faces slick with rain and fury. A bullet grazed Alina's shoulder, spinning her sideways. She slammed the attacker's head into the wall and fired point-blank. Morgan collapsed beside her, clutching his chest. Go, he gasped. Finish it. She shook her head. Not without you. He smiled faintly. You already did. Then his hand slipped away. Something inside her broke cleanly, quietly, like glass under pressure. She turned back toward the doorway, toward the storm, and stepped outside. The last of Cross's men stood at the edge of the clearing, rifles raised. She raised hers too. For a moment, they just stared at each other through the rain, soldiers from different worlds, both tired of orders. Then a voice shouted from the boat, "Stand down, mission complete." The men hesitated, then retreated. The boat reversed, disappearing into the black water. Alina stood alone in the rain, chest heaving, surrounded by silence and bodies. When the storm finally passed, the sea was calm again. She sank to her knees beside Morgan's body, fingers trembling. The drive was gone, Laila had escaped. That was all that mattered. She tilted her head toward the horizon, where dawn was breaking, fragile and gray. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak," she whispered. "It simply acts." Then she closed her eyes and let the sound of the tide carry her breath away. Rain still clung to the skyline when the world learned her name. Lieutenant Commander Alina Sullivan, missing in action. That was the headline. 3 words that said nothing about the truth and everything about how power buries its dead. Laila read it from a hospital bed in Key West. Her wrists were bruised, her voice gone from days without sleep. The nurses whispered about the woman who'd survived a Navy manhunt, about the files that had set the Pentagon on fire. They didn't know half of it. Outside the window, dawn washed the world clean. The ocean was calm again, as if nothing had happened. But Laila knew better. The sea never forgets. She reached for her laptop. The drive Alina had handed her before the gunfire still smelled faintly of salt and gunpowder. She slid it in, waiting for the hum of the machine to start. The folders opened: names, shipments, dates, wire transfers, signatures, all still there, all real. Her fingers trembled. "You did it, Sully." The door opened quietly. A man in plain clothes stepped in, worn shoes, tired eyes, the look of someone who'd seen the story from the inside. "Ms. Torres," he said, flashing credentials she didn't bother reading. "I'm Agent Lang, Federal Investigations. I need a statement about what happened." She closed the laptop. "Everything that matters is already public." He hesitated. "You understand Admiral Harmon is under arrest pending inquiry, but his allies are trying to spin this. They'll come for your credibility next." Laila almost laughed. "They already have." Lang pulled a folder from his coat and placed it on her tray. "There's something you should see." Inside was a photograph, grainy, zoomed from drone footage. Alina standing on a shoreline at dawn, rifle in hand, soaked in rain. Alive. Laila's breath caught. "Where?" "Taken hours after the firefight," Lang said. "She disappeared before we arrived. No body recovered, no confirmed death." Laila looked again. The angle was distant, the figure half blurred, but the posture was unmistakable. Straight spine, head high, calm in chaos. "So she's out there?" Lang nodded. "Maybe. She burned every trail behind her. If she wanted to vanish, she succeeded." Laila felt something shift inside her. Not relief exactly, but permission to hope. "Then I'll keep her story alive," she said. Lang's expression softened. "Make sure you do. The country needs it." 2 weeks later, Washington imploded. Admiral James Harmon resigned under pressure from a dozen committees. The hearings broadcast live across every network. The once untouchable officer sitting under fluorescent lights, sweating as senators read off emails, transfers, names of men who died for his profit. Laila watched from the press gallery, recorder in hand. When they played the clip, Alina's voice from one of the recovered comms, calm and cold, the entire room fell silent. "Truth isn't loyalty, it's duty." Harmon's lawyer tried to object. The sound of the gavel drowned him out. Later in the hallway, reporters swarmed her. "Ms. Torres, are you the whistleblower's contact? Was the commander working alone? Do you know where she is now?" Laila just said, "Ask the ocean." It became the quote that ended the broadcast that night. After the hearings, Laila drove south again. The roads were empty except for her thoughts. Every mile carried an echo: the gunfire, the thunder, Morgan's laugh, Alina's voice saying run. She stopped at the same mangrove inlet where it had all ended. The air was still heavy with salt and memory. She walked to the water's edge and crouched, running her fingers through the surf. "You got what you wanted," she whispered. "He's finished." Something brushed against her wrist, a small tin tag tangled in seaweed. She lifted it out. "SULLIVIAN-EC." The steel was rusted, edges worn smooth by tide. Her throat tightened. "You really don't do goodbyes, do you?" She slipped the tag into her pocket. Months passed. The story faded the way all headlines do, too many new scandals, too many louder lies. But somewhere between the static, the truth kept breathing. Academies used her name now when they talked about moral courage. The Sullivan Protocol, they called it, unofficial rule for officers who faced impossible orders. If duty demands silence, find a louder truth. Laila moved inland, away from the noise. She taught investigative ethics to young journalists who still believed in change. Sometimes they asked if the woman from her book, The Ghost in the Waves, was real. She always smiled and said, real enough to scare the right people. But on quiet nights, when storms rolled over the coast, she'd still dream of that voice on the radio, low, steady, unafraid. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. One evening, nearly a year later, Laila walked along a Key West pier as the sun dipped red into the sea. Tourists snapped pictures. Fishermen hauled lines. The world kept turning. She stopped near the end of the dock, where an old trawler rocked gently against its ropes. The name painted on its hull made her heart stutter. The Resolute. The boat she'd seen in every photograph, the one that should have been lost. Her pulse quickened. She stepped closer. No crew, no noise except the gulls. A single envelope lay taped to the wheelhouse door. Her name scrawled across it. She looked around empty pier, fading light, then opened it. Inside was a short note written in block letters, neat and precise. Laila. Truth floats, keep it moving. Yes. And beneath the note something small and metallic, a new set of dog tags, shiny, untarnished. For a long moment she just stood there, the paper fluttering in the sea breeze, eyes burning against the glow of sunset. Then she smiled, the first genuine smile since that night in the storm. Because some ghosts don't haunt to be remembered. They linger to remind the living what courage sounds like when the world tries to drown it. She looked out over the water. The horizon shimmered gold, endless, open. A voice echoed in her mind, calm, certain, familiar. You can't silence the tide. The wind rose, carrying salt and promise. Laila closed her eyes and whispered to the waves, thank you. And somewhere far beyond sight, a small vessel moved quietly toward the fading light, a lone figure at its helm, hair whipping in the wind, face turned to the horizon. Not a legend, not a hero. Just a woman who refused to sink. Because the ocean may bury bodies, but not truth. It always comes back with the tide.